Welcome to the Relationship Manifesto, episode number 5. My name's Chris Smith, Shambles Guru, and I'm with Dr. Stephen Whitehead. And Stephen is an academic, an author, a relationship coach, and a researcher. And also, the important thing is the author of this book, The Relationship Manifesto. And this episode is entitled, Love is Not What You Imagine. Stephen, have you got your 60-second elevator pitch ready?
60 seconds on love, that would be a world record, I think.
Oh, okay.
But I'll have a go. Love it's the most overused, the most misunderstood, and the most powerful word in the English language. It is what we look for, what we hope to receive. It envelops us, it hurts us, it makes us excited, and it can give us a lot of pain. And love can also be the biggest illusion we've ever had in our lives. This is what this podcast is about.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this podcast.
Not quite.
Before I pressed just now, before I pressed the record switch, Stephen said something to me, which I'm going to say to you. He's looking at me weird. So what am I going to say? He said about this chapter. He said, "This is a tricky one and a complicated topic." So I'm particularly interested to hear what's going to happen over the next the next 30 minutes. So I'm going to be interested to find out why is it tricky? Why is it complicated?
We don't understand love, and nobody's ever written a definitive book on love, and probably nobody ever will do. It's the deepest of emotions. It can generate anxiety, hate. It can generate fear, and it can generate a sense of wanting someone, particularly often ironically when that someone's not available. It can be an illusion, and I'm going to give examples of it being an illusion in this podcast. We can love many different things. We can love the most bizarre things. We can love an animal. Okay, that's probably not unreasonable to love a pet. We can love inanimate objects. There's research shows that many men, for example, fall in love with the female dolls. There's companies now around the world that make these female dolls very lifelike, and they actually fall in love with them. In fact, I know of one instance where the man actually went to a marriage ceremony with his doll. Yeah, I know you're looking at me amazed now, Chris, but this is...
No,
I
am, because this is...
Yeah, we're talking about a 6-foot doll, female, with all the physical attributes of a human, except in some sort of vinyl or pseudo-plastic form. But so I'm just making the point that and this man loved his doll. And we do love males, females, and we love those that are neither male or female, but what we call transgender, the transsexual. So we project. With love, we project need. We project our own desires, needs, illusions, myths, expectations, our own imagery onto the other. And when we find someone who mirrors that back to us, then there's that sense of, okay, this is our soulmate, this is the person we've got to spend the rest of our life with, this is where we've found our true home. But unfortunately we also displace our own love needs onto other people. So we displace our own feeling of inadequacy, our own fears of the future, we displace our own lack of acceptance or insecurities around life onto another person, and in the hope that that person will then deal with all that, fulfill it, help us move on, help us become fulfilled. So there is many issues around love. Love can be, as I say, it can be an illusion. We often, many people, in fact I think everybody at some point falls in love with someone they don't really know. How does that work? How can we fall in love with someone we don't know? But I've seen it many times. And I'll give practical examples of that from research I've done shortly. So love is a highly complicated phenomenon. But at the end of the day, it's also something that is a major glue in most relationships. It's I don't think the love can necessarily hold a relationship together over a long period of time, because love changes, and the sort of love you have for someone when you meet for the first time can well be something different, a different type of love 10 years later.
Yes, but love, isn't it? I have a feeling that love is devalued over time. People use it flippantly. I'd love some cheesecake now, and and a glass of wine or so. It's a word which is
Sure.
It's a bit like some of the profanities you see on television now,
Yeah.
which 50 years ago would have closed down the TV program, which now is become invisible. Do you think the word itself is
One of the problems with it, and there's been research by sociologists on this, is that we're now looking more for what we call a pure relationship. And this pure relationship is one whereby there is a strong love element to it. Now, in the past, men and women went into marriages, and I'm talking now in the days when very few couples lived as common law,
Yes.
man and wife, but actually went through the ceremony and got married. They went into marriages with the expectation it would last a lifetime, and even with the determination that it was going to last a lifetime, regardless of what happened next. So low levels of divorce, longevity in marriage, although people were not living as long as they are today. Nowadays, couples tend to only sustain a marriage or relationship if there is what they feel, if they feel it's pure, if they feel that the love is there. When the love goes, the marriage goes, the relationship breaks up. In the past, relationships didn't break up when the love went. They carried on. They carried on because the social stigma attached to divorce. They carried on because it was financially impossible for them to ever get divorced. They carried on because that was the expectation of the society and the community they lived in, that they stayed together come what may. Now we don't do that. Now we're seeking pure relationships which are manifestly about love, and they are relationships which, if that love goes, and so do we. It's not for life anymore. It's for as long as the love lasts, and when the love's gone, we go. Now we're talking particularly about those couples who are living in developed and developing countries, who have the financial capacity and possibilities to go.
Or to make that decision.
They
yes.
can make that decision.
Yes.
They're not economically rooted to the relationship, come what may.
Yes.
And this is one of the interesting things we're seeing about love. We're seeing this increase in divorces around the world. It's being driven by women. It's being driven by women who are middle class, economically independent, who once they find that the relationship that they were in a love relationship, when that love relationship moves off into some other type of relationship, which is not so, where love is not the key ingredient, then they say, well, I'm not having this. Rather than be in a non-love relationship, I'll be in no relationship.
Yes.
So love is immensely powerful, and it's absolutely an overused word, but you could not write a book on relationships without using it.
Yes.
And but very few people want to explain it, want to decipher it, want to unpick it.
Do you only love your soulmate?
No, you can love many. You can go. I mean, I said in the last podcast about formative, functional, and peripheral relationships. You could love a person if you're in a peripheral relationship. You can love that person, but we just got to recognise a different type of love. I'll give you an example of the illusion, the capacity of love to be false, and we've all got to be careful about false love. It's all going to hit us at some point or another. It's part of our learning. It's part of our growing up and maturing about love, life, and relationships. Some years ago, when I was doing research for a book, I did research into internet dating, and this was the beginning of the internet dating phenomenon. And what happened is, as most of the listeners to this will know, you go on an online dating agency, you meet someone, you exchange contact. And in those days, and still do to some extent, most of that communication that comes on afterwards will be through email. Now, email is an interesting phenomenon because email is immediate, and you can say a lot in an email. Now, what I found from the relationships that I explored was that men and women, and it's not just women, this is men also, were getting into these communications with someone else who they never actually met. And these communications would go on for a week or more before they did actually physically meet, sometimes within other parts of the country, sometimes other parts of the world. But I found that within a very short time, that email communication was gathering intensity very, very quickly, to the extent that in some instances people were sending 400 or 500 emails a week. They were on the email all the time to this new lover,
Yes.
who they'd never actually met.
Yes.
The average time it took for them to feel that they'd fallen in love, 2 weeks, with someone they'd never physically ever met. It was just the words coming out from the email. They were displacing their own needs, desires, expectations, illusions, imaginations onto the words of the email coming from this other person, some other part of the world. That indicates the what sociologists call the discursive capacity of love. It's something that we engage with, we draw on it, we want it, but we've got to be careful about it. It's very powerful, and by being powerful it can be very dangerous. We can get hurt through it.
Do you think
love is very risky?
Do you think a clever wordsmith could then? I'm sure Shakespeare's listening to this. Do you think a clever wordsmith could make somebody fall in love with them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can do it but the audience for that, the person who's on the receiving end of this wordsmith's actions, has to be open to it. There has to be a need in them. If that person on the other end is feeling needy for love, is searching for love, then absolutely they are vulnerable to this.
But isn't everybody looking? In the words of the famous Beatles, it's all you need is love, right? Isn't everybody looking for it? The advertising agencies around the world are continually bombarding us with the fact that, I'm sorry, you're not a whole person if you're not loved. Well,
we're either all looking for love or we're all looking for sex, and I think the two they are companions in the same game, and we can mix them up. I'm going to talk about sex in another podcast, but in terms of love, I think we all want love. Why do we want love? We have to ask this question. One of the reasons why we want love is because we want acceptance for who we are. If someone says to you, "I love you," I love you. I am a human being with my own weaknesses, strengths, complexities. I love you, another human being, and I'm recognizing, in making that statement, I'm recognizing that you, everything you are, your age, your culture, your language, your personality, your character, every essence of you, I love. That's a heck of a big statement to make. That's why we should be careful when we say it. One of the things I would say to anybody listening to this, never, ever say you love someone unless you really do. It's the biggest lie you can ever tell. Men are bad at this. Women will come along and they'll say, "I love you." And in saying that, they expect the response, "I love you too." Don't do it.
Yes.
Don't do it. Don't even say "I love you too" as a nice little finisher.
Yeah, just a throwaway line.
A throwaway line.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you said that, you've given off a most powerful message to that other person, and that just draws them closer to you. And it might be the worst possible move they can ever make.
So is it a word that's all or nothing? All or nothing? Is it like, it's like the word unique? You're not a little bit unique. You're either unique or you're not.
Can you
have a little bit of love? Or
I've got gay friends. I'm not gay. I'm straight, but I've got gay male friends, and I can say to them I love them, and I do. These are men I'm very close to. Do I love them in a romantic, sexual way? No. Do I love them in a way where I want to live with them? No. I love them as human beings in their own way. So when I say that, it's about it's like a heightened friendship. Now, if I go to a woman, and I'm already maybe about to get or involved with, and I say that to her, I'm signaling a whole different set of meanings and potential to that person. If I say that to a woman, as a straight man, I'm saying to you, I love you, then there's a lot of expectations going to be kicked off from that simple exchange.
Yes.
I can love my cat, I can love my garden, I can love living in Chiang Mai, but you say this to another human being, you're making a very important statement about who they are. You're validating them as a human being.
Yes.
Your cat can't validate you as a human being. The house can't validate you as a human being. Your Porsche outside can't validate you as a human being. These things can all make you feel good. They're all forms of well-being, but they can't validate you as an individual. Only another human being can do that.
Yes.
And the most powerful, the ultimate validation of any human being is when they say, I love you. That's why we can never lose our emotional link with our parents, because there's that sense that they loved us without judgment. They love us without question.
Yes.
In the way that hopefully we do with our children. But with another human being where there isn't that connection, where it comes about through romance and intimacy, then the love word is a powerful one. Use it sparingly, and know when you're in love and when you're not in love. That's the other thing. That's not easy though, of course.
I think I'm getting more confused than clarifying it. All of this. It's what was the first sentence we started off with? This is a tricky one and a complicated topic. So not only am I still not sure about what the definition would be, is even if there is a definition, there's a scale of 0 to 10, and also, and you touched on that just now, the biggie, which is the culture.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
In the West, in places like, and if I'm stereotyping now, I really apologise, but I'm thinking back to the UK, and people do not use the word in the UK as much as some other countries. It's something you wouldn't say, or if it is used, it's a flippant use it's a means to an ends, and you can imagine what the ends might be.
Oh, we can use love instrumentally. And people do. I've done it myself at times. I don't do it now. I've learned over time. I learned through my research and through my experiences of life that love is a discourse. It's a way of being, and it can be a set of actions, and it can be a set of words or meanings that you impart to another person, maybe manipulatively, maybe deliberately, strategically, or maybe it's simply that you have this overwhelming connection with people. But I know from myself, I've said I love you to women because I felt, and I did in that moment, in that second, on that day, I felt it.
Yes.
2 weeks later, it gone. I didn't.
So
it's love changes.
This isn't testosterone speaking, or it's.
We've got to be careful here. We've got to be able to make a differentiate between a strong feeling of liking someone, and strong feeling of wanting to be with someone, to this sense of love. I ask. One thing I ask of when I'm talking to my students about that, they say, if I ask a student, have you been in love? And often it's the case, I have to say, most 21-year-olds, 20-something, will say no, they'll recognise they haven't been in love. Every now and again you'll get one who will say, yeah, I've been in love. And I ask the question, would you have died for that person? For me, that's the kick. That's the kick. Because I would die for my children. Would I die for my wife? That's the point. Would I die for that person? That is just one marker of recognising whether what you've got here is an illusion, is false, or is the big deal.
Well, that's an interesting one. You've preempted my question, because I was going to actually ask about, as you're an academic, and academics like to count things and measure things before publishing, and I was going to ask you how do you actually measure it, and I think that's a pretty strong measurement, though.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong one, but we see evidence of that around the world when people will die for love, and I think it's the ultimate sacrifice. It's the ultimate test. I mean, one would hope that one doesn't have to. I think for many of us, love becomes confused with just companionship,
yes,
compatibility, comfort, and that's fine. But just recognise that what you have is not the full blown version. And often, the other point I would make is we don't always want to be in the full-blown version. Now it's just nice to live a quiet, compatible, comfortable, equitable life. Being in love, the actual feeling of being in love, is debilitating. It's hard work. We are stressed.
Yes.
It's a very risky place to be. Love, lost love, the pain of love. Research has been done on this, and it shows that the pain of losing love, the pain of lost love, is worse than physical pain. It can bring about physical pain in itself. It's a terrible place to be. It's not a good place to be in, isn't it? To be in a place where you've actually lost it, where you feel rejected, where you are hurting so much that you can't sleep. You're going to bed crying, you're waking up crying, and you can't function in the everyday world. This is not good. But love can bring this about. Lost love can bring this about. The other converse of that, of course, is when we're in love, it's almost like being on a chemical high.
Yes.
Now, the other point I would say on that is that, of course, that itself can be addictive, and you can find that people, and I've come across this, where people will seek out that chemical high from one love to the next. Once that feeling of being in love dissipates,
you need your fix.
They need the fix. They go on to the next one, and,
yes.
and it lasts a few months, then on to the next one.
Yes.
Of course, you can't live like that. It's a very unpleasant way of being in the world, and of course of which it damages others as well.
Yes. About 10 minutes ago, you mentioned the word romance.
Yeah.
Now, how does romance and love? Is that a partnership?
It is a partnership because in the traditional sense of the word, there is this sense of. I was born up in, like you, brought up in an era where one courted. You remember that word?
They actually said courted, not caught it. Right.
Courted, yeah.
We courted. And you asked her dad for her hand in marriage.
That's right. And
yes.
I, on my first marriage, I actually did that. So you courted your partner, and it was usually the man who courted the woman. And the woman's going to give her favours or not, ultimately might lead to marriage or whatever. Now, this is the traditional way of going about it. Now, central to that courtship was romance. You were romantic. You bought flowers. You remembered birthdays. You were a nice man. You remember that day? You remember that time?
It's a long time ago.
A long time ago. So,
sorry, I'm in the vampire.
You're still in the vampire
now,
mode.
yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Now, romance is fine, and women particularly set a lot of store by this, and I think they are. I would say to them, be wary of this, because romance might be fine when you're courting, but it can be a smokescreen.
No, I'm really disappointed with this. I thought romance was forever.
Chris.
No, I'm serious. I think to have an element of romance throughout your total relationship, it doesn't run out. It doesn't sort of.
Romance can be. Listen to what I'm saying. Romance can be a smokescreen for what is really going on between two people. These become what happens over time. The romantic gestures, which start out as spontaneous and loving, they become routine. They become instrumental. They become habitual, and they become predictable. Okay, you're not just.
No, I debate you on that one. Because I think I feel. Sorry, I'm going. This is the bad role now for me. It's only if you allow them to.
The flowers at weekends, the expensive anniversary dinners, glitzy Christmas cards that full of kisses and honeyed words. These become the problem, not the solution.
Mm.
They're too easy. We can slip into the card shop. We can buy the flowers. We can stop off in the UK. You can stop off at Tesco or the petrol station and buy a bunch of flowers and take them back to your wife. This is not spontaneous. You're actually creating the illusion of love through the romantic gesture. Now, if it's done genuinely, if it's done with a real desire to make that other person feel good, feel well loved, feel heightened, then that's fine. But we've got to be aware that romantic gestures are not always done with pure love intention. They can be done instrumentally, and they can conceal a problem. And that lies a danger. One of the women, I'll give you an example of one of the women I interviewed for the book. She said to me, yes, he buys me flowers every weekend, and he never forgets our anniversary. But what I really want is for us to talk more.
Yes.
And what this woman is saying is very simple, but it's very significant in the modern age. And she's indicating the most profound shift in love relationships. That is, women have revised their expectations, not only of what they want from a man, but what they're prepared to accept in a relationship. The bottom line is, the truth is, men have to work harder now to make a relationship work. Flowers once a week just won't cut it. And this is the biggest impact that's one of the biggest big impacts that's happened on relationships over the last few decades. Fine, buy the flowers, but don't imagine that then means everything's okay. It's when it's concealing a problem, when there's these habitual gestures are not really dealing with it. What makes a relationship work ultimately is free and open communication, and that's not easy because it takes both parties to do it. That's the real sharing.
Yes.
Sharing an anniversary card is not sharing. It's nice, but it's not indicative of what's going on in the relationship. Sitting down and talking and opening oneself up to your partner and listening to them and them listening to you, that is the real sharing that makes a relationship vibrant, lively, and more likely to keep it lasting long.
Yes. You did mention spontaneity earlier on, and I actually feel that spontaneity is a big plus for romance. It is.
Absolutely, yeah.
And with the technology, and as you know, I'm heavily into the technology, the fact that you can, on Facebook, you can make sure that everybody that you've friended gets a personal happy birthday message from you. That means absolutely nothing nowadays.
I'm absolutely... I won't go so far as to say I hate Facebook, but no, I do hate Facebook. I think when you've got a situation whereby, and this is one of the issues of relationships and love, when you've got a situation whereby people, and particularly not just young people, old people, are starting to count their friends, and I use that term very loosely. They're starting to count their friends in the hundreds. Again, people they've never met. Then we've got to reappraise what we mean by friendship and what we mean by love. There are practical suggestions that I have about dealing with love or coping with it, and I can talk about those.
Make it sound like I caught it. Excuse me, doctor. I can call you doctor
That's
for real
good.
now. Excuse me, doctor. I've caught love.
Yeah.
Do you have any ointment I can rub on to get rid of it? Is it?
Okay.
Where's the romance? It's you're intellectualizing it. Oh, it feels no.
The point about love is we haven't got to trust our feelings of love too much. They can let us down. They are not that reliable. Love is like a tree. It needs to grow strong. It needs to grow sturdy over time. It needs to take root deep down. And the root of love is empathy, knowledge both of oneself and the other, and it's trust. Absolute trust is absolutely key. Without these, it will eventually get blown off. We also need to recognise what drives us to feel in love. And the conditions of love can be quite different for men than for women. I'll give you an example here. One of the compelling love attractions for men is the idea that they'll be the protector. It's a very strong self-image if the man is protector. It reinforces the sense of masculinity and sexuality. And it's very difficult for a man to let go of this notion and accept his partner can manage very well without him. The compelling love attraction of a woman is similar but operates differently. That is to feel validated as a woman. And it's interesting, men don't go into relationships in order to get the gaze of approval of other men. But women certainly seek the gaze of approval of other women through the love relationships. The gaze of women on women is immensely powerful. And that's a big social conditioner for the way women, in any society, act and operate and their expectations. Men, no. They don't go looking, let's say, for the gaze of approval of other men. When they're looking, they internalise it in quite a different way. Now, there are suggestions to deal with it. We need to deal with love first of all, we need to deal with love in a much more fundamental way and not allow it to dominate our lives too much. We have to recognise it doesn't always bring happiness. In fact, it can bring a lot of pain. And we have to evaluate love. Now, I know this goes against the grain, but I'm suggesting, for example, if you love this person, but do you want to live with them? Do you want to marry them? Do I like his or her character and lifestyle? Do I love this person, but what sacrifices am I prepared to make for him or her? That's a big question. I love this person, but what is driving that love? What am I hoping to get from him or her? I love this person, but have I been with them long enough to truly know who they are? Have I seen them in every situation? Does this person really know me? Importantly, I love this person, but do I want to change them? Does that person love me, but in that process, is she expecting that she's going to change me into someone she's going to love more? Don't avoid that under any circumstances. You shouldn't have any expectations of love or where it might come from. And this is something that's come up in our conversation. It can come anywhere. The important thing, though, is disregard issues of appearance, age, beauty, physique, and ethnicity. Forget it. Once we start bringing these issues in, we're then starting to be instrumental. We're then starting to create a love interest based on some surface. It's the surface stuff. Love built on the superficial isn't love anyway. It just appears to be. And don't confuse romantic gestures with love, as I said earlier.
Yes.
Romance can be done highly instrumentally, with a clear aim in mind. True love is generated through care and attention, not through purchase of red roses. And finally, be especially careful with love that develops via email or any other virtual communication system. All the research is showing that both men and women are very vulnerable to this medium. What happens is that the messages between two people, strangers, intensify very quickly. It can take just a few weeks for this to happen. And in a very short time, you're devoted, so-called, to this person. Often, you've never met them. You have to be very careful about this because that is false love at work. I could call it fool's love, but I won't be so judgmental. It's just false love, and we've all been in it. I've been in it. I've fallen into that trap before, and I know many people who have as well.
Before we started this podcast, we actually had a debate about virtual worlds and Second Life, because I do a fair amount of work in Second Life as an avatar, and I think that what you just said, I suspect the two of us could, and I'd take a stronger action in debating that about online meeting. The statistics in the States now, for the number of people who are getting married who initially met each other online, is well into double figures. It's just phenomenal, and maybe that is just an electronic way of meeting your soulmate. Maybe that's fate at work, as you touched on
I'm fine. And I met my fourth wife. I had to think for a minute. I met my fourth wife online, and she was living in Singapore. I was living in the UK, and we met through one of the big online dating agencies. This is a good number of years ago now, at the beginning of this phenomenon. And we fell in love, and it was for a number of years. It was a very strong relationship. So I've met many good friends, lovers, and who've become friends, and it's online dating and meeting online is great. But it's when ultimately you've got to move it from the virtual into the real. You've got to be living with that person to fully understand them. Before you can call it love. Now, if you can, I've got friendships which are virtual by virtue of being via email, and all around the world. But I'm not living with these people. I'm not in sexual or intimate relationships with them. Those sorts of relationships that I'm in with them are very valid. They're important to me. They're part of my life. But these are not people I'm going to claim to be in love with.
Yes. I'd agree with you there. I think most of the colleagues I know online and friends I have online, many of them who I've never met in real life, but we are good friends and we are good colleagues.
Yeah, sure.
But the ones that have developed relationships with other avatars or other people online, it usually has been a starting point, and it does evolve into the real world as well from the virtual world.
Sure.
We're into 35 minutes again already.
Okay.
I want to ask you one last question though. Is we touched on earlier about about the modern woman and the modern guy, right? They're very different to what they were 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
Not just they're living longer, but they are actually different.
They are different, yeah.
Women are more independent now.
Yeah.
And a lot of the reasons you said, especially women, for falling in love, are maybe not there anymore.
That's right.
So do you think people are learning to live without love more, or is it still a key part of their existence?
This is a very tricky question. We've got more singletons than ever before. It's estimated in the UK in a few years' time you'll have something like 43% of all men will be single, 40% of all women.
In the UK?
That's just in the UK. And the same trends are emerging around the world. Wherever a nation gets developed, it gets developed only if you educate 50% all the population,
yes.
and that includes all the women as well. And as soon as you start educate women, then they stop having the frequency of marriage. But that's not to say people don't want love. Of course, they're single people, but they want love in their life. They want companionship. They want intimacy. It's not just wanting sex. It's wanting someone who makes a difference in their life, someone they can share their life with, share their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, their expectations, share the good and the bad. This is entirely reasonable. It's part of the human condition. Fortunately, we can find it in many different places, not least through the web. Unfortunately, we're also moving in and out of it with increasing speed. So we're having many more relationships, some of which are, and as I said earlier in the earlier podcast, different types of relationships. They're all valid in their own particular way. They all bring strengths and weaknesses, but they are part of this ongoing search for love. But we've also, with more singletons around and more marriage breakups and the whole institution of marriage now appearing if problematic, if not fatally flawed, we're elevating love. We're obsessed by it. I don't think it's actually that we are obsessed by sex, and I don't think we're obsessed by money. They are big obsessions, but the real big obsession is love or its absence, and that's the same I think that's the case for both men and women. They're seeking out.
Is it validation, do you think?
It's certainly validation of identity, and that's why we're seeing the success of the likes of Facebook. These social networking phenomena provide us with an immediate, easy forum for communication with other people. We come home 7 or 8 o'clock at night. We've been working for 10 or 12 hours a day. We don't want to go out. You know, in the UK, they're going to the local pub. That was a phenomenon that, I was part of as a manager for 10 or 12 years. That's changed now. Now what people do, they don't even watch television. They go straight to the computer, check the email, check the dating agency if they're on it, check the Facebook account. That's where they're communicating.
Yes.
That's where they're engaging. That's where they're living out their lives. What they're looking for, well, a lot of the people they're communicating with on Facebook or the like, they're not expecting to be in love with, but they're expecting this validation of their own identity. I've got all these friends, so I must be important. I've got all these friends, so I must be likable. I've got all these friends, so I must be able to socialise. But it's all virtual. It's words on a screen.
Yes.
It's photos on a screen. It's not the same as going out and actually living out that process and going through the nitty-gritty of a day relationship.
Yes.
Every day of the week, 24/7, you're with someone. That is the full Monty of relationships, and that's whether it's a marriage or whether it's a common law marriage relationship, then those are the ones that are hard work.
Yes.
And it's when it becomes hard, we're choosing increasingly. They're saying, well, I don't want this. It doesn't work for me. I'm going to go back to the computer.
Yes. Okay. So love's hard work, but it's worth it in the end.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. Yes, it's and it doesn't matter who follows me on Twitter, so long as there's a lot of you following me. I'd love that to happen. So my Twitter name is Shambles Guru. Never mind the love. Thanks very much for that. Remember, listeners, that we have the blog at relationshipmanifesto.posterous.com, where you're able to leave comments on any of these topics. And that brings us to the end of episode 5. The next one, is the three identities of every relationship. Is that right? I think that's the next one.
What are the three identities in every relationship?
And so we'll be back on that next week. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the podcast yet, you just have to go to the to Apple's iTunes store, and if you search for Relationship Manifesto, it will come up, and you can subscribe there so that you receive the episodes automatically in your iTunes folder every weekend when we put them up there. So thanks for listening again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.